Also, about the time we went broke and started doing budgets, we started with doing the budget, we started doing this thing called the envelope system. I heard about it from a Christian financial counselor at that time named Larry Burkett. And Larry was teaching a thing called the envelope system. Turns out Larry didn't invent it either. Your grandmother did. It has been around forever. And all the envelope system is this. We figured out that on some things, we get automatically drafted out of our checking account. For mutual funds or for insurance, they automatically draft us. For our utilities, they automatically draft us. We just want all of that on autopilot. That's fine. Other things, we write a check and mail the check through the mail, right? But other things, when we would go into the grocery store, or we would go out to eat, or we would go shopping for clothing, we would have a set amount, and we never knew where we stood with it. We would always be a little over or not over, and we wouldn't be in balance, and we'd come home kind of with that feeling again that maybe I just spent the money that should have been used for something else. And we discovered how to fix that. And we actually kind of discovered it while we were having a big fight about the grocery store. Because Sharon's like, you don't give me enough for groceries. And I'm like, you spend too much at groceries. And you know how that works, right? And it really wasn't a pleasant conversation where we came to a mutual agreement. It was more like a knockdown, drag out. And I said, okay, here's what we're going to do. I read about this thing with Larry Burkett. We're going to try this. How much do you need for groceries in a month? And she said, well, I could do it on $600, but if you give it to me every time and not gripe at me, I could do it on $500. And I said, well, all right, we can do that. This was a long time ago when $500 was a lot of money. And so we got an envelope out. We wrote food on the envelope. And at the first of every month, or on the 1st and the 15th, if you get paid that way, we would put $500 or $250 in cash in the envelope. And then you don't buy anything out of the food envelope except food. And you don't buy any food ever except out of the food envelope. And so if you go out to eat and you forget the food envelope, you have to turn around and go back home and get the food envelope. No cheating. We did that one time. I can show you the location where we turned around in the parking lot of this place to go back home, and it surprised the babysitter, kind of scared her, and went back in and got the food envelope, and then we went out to eat. When we did that, when we went, no, we can't go write a check, or we can't hit the anytime teller, we've got to stick with our system. When we made the effort to turn around, drive back to the house 3 or 4 miles there, and surprise the babysitter, something clicked inside of us, and our life started changing. Because there was a moment there where we drew a line in the sand, and we said, we're not going to misbehave anymore. That's a big deal. And so we said, we're going to have the food envelope. We're buying all of our food out of the food envelope. Clothing envelope. How many of you buy clothing and then somebody at your house gripes at you about that? Hello, no, be careful. Okay? What if you had an amount in the clothing envelope that you had agreed to, and it can't be spent on anything except clothes? Then you'd never get griped at if you bought clothes with that money, right? Because that's all it can be spent on. As long as you don't go over that amount, then there's no griping, because we all agreed on this amount in our budget. That's how it ended up in the envelope. To this day, if you talk to Sharon Ramsey and you get her to open her purse, you'll find our deluxe envelope system in her purse right now. We still do envelopes every single month. We don't do many of them. We only do 3 or 4 things with envelopes. But we still write out a check that includes the food, it includes the entertainment, it includes the clothing, and we cash those checks, and we put that amount of cash in each of those envelopes with those labels on them, and it keeps us from overspending that category. Because if you look in the food envelope and there's no money in the food envelope, you don't order a pizza. You warm up leftovers. Shocking. But the kids' college fund gets funded. All right, now as we go into the forms in the workbook here, you're going to have to turn ahead of the forms, and I'm going to jump along, and you got a bunch of instruction pages and things, so we're going to hear a lot of flip, 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 flip to stay with me on this, because we're going to hit the high points, and I want to give you instructions on how to operate these forms. The first form is the major components of a healthy financial plan. The major components of a healthy financial plan. There are basically 14 major components of a healthy financial plan if you're in here. Number 1 is the written cash flow plan. We've been talking about that. Number 2 is the will or an estate plan. You need a will. 78% of the public dies without a will. That's stupid. It's stupid and it's rude. It's rude to die without a will, because the people that are left behind, you leave them in what's known as a mess. It takes years to unfold some of this garbage. Families are split apart because some bozo died without a will and didn't tell people what to do with his stuff, and they're arguing over his 2 toothpicks. So get a will, and you can get a will inexpensively today. You can go to one of these online things, and you want one that is specific to your state, because probate law is specific to your state. And then you need to learn the particular things, whether you have to have witnesses or notarization or what you have to have. But if you're broke, why do I need a will? You got kids. You don't want the state deciding anything for you. You need to take your destiny in your hands. If you don't have a lot of money, so what? For a few dollars, you can get a will and a little estate planning thing with an online service, and we strongly recommend that. Strongly recommend that. The third thing is a debt reduction plan. Begin your debt snowball. We'll talk about that in detail when we get into the debt lesson. The next one is a tax reduction plan. Vote. Next one is an emergency fund. A fully funded emergency fund is how much? No, a fully funded is how much? 3 to 6 months. And that's baby step what? 3. Good, very good. The next thing is a college fund. We're going to deal with that in baby step 5 and in the fruition to tuition lesson, the retirement and college planning lesson. We'll go into detail on that. Charitable giving. You must be doing some charitable giving systematically, regardless of your faith or your background or your lack of faith. Giving is a part of a healthy life. We're going to talk about that in the bonus lesson. Teaching your kids about money. You need to teach your children how to handle money. If you don't, they'll come home and live with you. Life insurance. You need good life insurance. We're going to cover in detail how to get life insurance, what kind of life insurance in the life insurance lesson. Same with health insurance, disability insurance, auto insurance, and homeowners insurance. The bottom line is this is a checklist of a good, healthy financial plan. To the extent you do not have stuff going on in those categories, you need to have stuff going on in those categories. And we're going to teach you something in every single one of those except the will. And we're not going to do estate planning in this course. But you need to get a will. I'll tell you that one more time out loud. Now, the next slide is the consumer equity sheet. An accountant would call this a balance sheet. It's really simple. It's what you own minus what you owe equals the equity in that item. For instance, looking at in red there at the top line, your house. Maybe you own a house worth $180,000 and it has a mortgage on it of $149,000. That would be equity of $31,000. And so you keep going what you own minus what you owe, and then go all the way down that list. Now, when you go down that list on that right-hand column, all the way down in the right-hand corner, the figure that is the total of your equity is your net worth. And when you get $1 million in that corner, you're a millionaire. Now, you can't just write $1 million in there. You have to really have the equity, and then you're a millionaire. So what you own minus what you owe. Now, I'm completely debt-free, so it's just what I own all moves over to that equity column and then runs to the bottom, and we just total it up, and that gives you what's called your net worth. Now, that matters because that shows you over time how you're winning. We used to call this our hope sheet. For many years when we were fighting the bear, and it was just hand-to-hand combat, every single month we're just like barely getting by, and we're knocking out a little debt, knocking out a little debt, knocking out a little debt. We didn't feel like we were getting anywhere because it was still tight. It was still a struggle. We still didn't know where we were going. But when we would add it up on this sheet, we'd go, okay, the debt's going down, the savings is going up, and that bottom number down there is going up. And we get it, even though things were tight, we still kind of felt like we were a rat in a wheel. We were getting traction and we were making progress. So we could write hope across the top of that as we saw that number go up, moving along there while we're fighting that process. Now, you're beginning to build the budget when you fill out the income sources. And all we're going to do here is figure out for this month what your income is. Joe and Susie have 2 salaries here. They have a $2,716 salary that comes in on the first of the month, and then another salary that comes in of $945 on the first and the 15th of the month. If you put those together, you get $3,661. So for our mythical couple here we have $3,661 in order to spend this month. Now, that's take-home pay because that's all you've got to work with. The rest of it's theory and discussion and philosophy and all that. Doesn't matter. So just deal with take-home pay. That's your only issue. Lump sum payment planning sheet is where you keep Christmas from sneaking up on you. You keep those gotchas, those big bills that happen once a year or once a quarter or something like that from sneaking up on you. I used to pay my car insurance quarterly. Any of you pay your car insurance quarterly? So absolutely nothing wrong with that. But it kind of kept me off kilter all the time because I was like, free month, gotcha. free month, gotcha. You know, and it kind of felt that way in the budget all the time. And so when I looked at this, I just went, let's just put the thing on monthly and have it auto-drafted, and I didn't worry about it anymore. But what you've got to do is you figure out what I'm going to spend. For instance, we've got on here home repairs, $1,800. We're anticipating that. Divided by 12, if I'm going to stick $150 then in the budget to accomplish that over time. If you're doing a Christmas budget, you know, you got $1,200 for a Christmas budget, divided by 12 is $100 a month, and you put that in. And now you can't do everything and while you're in different baby steps, but as you're moving along, this makes you keep things from sneaking up on you that you know are coming. Well, really, new tires or a car breaking down aren't unexpected things. These are things you can count on. Tires wear out and cars break. So you always need to have two things going. One, you need to have an emergency fund of 3 to 6 months of expenses. And two, in your budget, be budgeting for car repairs. To not do so is pretty naive because cars break. You can count on it.